Forsberg pulls up for three, boom, knocks it down.
Curry from the corner at three, puts it in.
For overtime, makes it Garrett. Right.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the MVP cast from me, Mark Woods. My guest in this edition is a guard from Texas who's made himself right at home on Tyneside. 15 years over in Europe, but the last 8 in Newcastle and 9 trophies with the Eagles. He's also got his own training bit on the side, which we're going to talk about, I'm sure. But welcome to the MVP cast, Drew Lasker.
Hey, what's up, Mark? Thanks for having me, man.
Let's start on that trophy final from last week. You guys beating Solent Kestrels in overtime, and those few days leading up to it. What was the conversations going on there with you and other players about whether you'd go ahead or not, and obviously guys who were thinking about and eventually decided to go home?
Yeah, well, everything kind of happened very quickly. The week leading up to it, there was conversations amongst the players, ourselves, and we just was all kind of on the same page about the league kind of shutting it down, because obviously that's when the NBA had announced they were shutting it down, and then various European leagues were shutting it down. So in a sense, you know, we kind of wanted the league to kind of save us from ourselves, so we didn't have to obviously make any big decisions moving forward in the foreseeable future. When
did you first become aware, or when was the first time that you had that conversation, whether it came through Ian or other people, but that the guys were going to leave? And what was the reaction when you heard that?
Well, I found out on Friday evening. So I had been away from my phone for a while because I was doing some training at the facility, which I do, and so I had been away from my phone for a couple of hours. So I get to my phone, I see, some calls from Darius and some messages, and so McLeod calls me as I'm driving, and he kind of asked me, have I heard what was going on? And I was like, no. What's up? And he was like, well, just to let you know that, a couple of the guys have decided that they don't feel comfortable playing in the game. And I was like, okay, he had said that, said those names, obviously Mike, Nick, and Sade at the time. And I don't even know if it was actually all those 3 guys were confirmed, but I just know I know CJ was kind of involved in that group as well, because he had some concerns. And I was like, that's fine. It is what it is. Everyone has to make a decision what's best for them. And then after that, he mentioned that they were actually wanting to go home, and they wanted to go home that next morning. And I was like, that's when I was like, wow. I was kind of caught off guard by that, about the possibility of them leaving so abruptly. And he said, and then after that, he kind of asked me, what are my thoughts on it? And I was like, look, if there's a game going on, then I want to play. And then he was like, okay. So then after that, it was the question of, as far as like the travel situation, do we want to travel the day before? Because we were leaving that Saturday morning as well. And I was like, for my personal, I just would rather, if I'm going to play in this game, I want to treat it as a final. I don't want to go the day on the game and just play the game just to tick a box. Like, if I decide to play, if we're going to play, like, we need to go into there like it's a final, like it's the biggest game of the season, and like we need to prepare as if we want to win this game. So that was kind of the 48 hours leading up into the match.
Was there mixed feelings? Because I spoke to people, we were doing the TV commentary and that, and I spoke to people that were, family first, understand it. Other people who were like, they could have waited. What's your commitment to your team? It was just another 36 hours potentially. I mean, is there a kind of mixed feeling when your teammates, the guys you're supposed to want to go into the trenches with, if we use this war analogy that seems slightly appropriate just now, but was that sort of a little bit of a feeling like, could you just take one more? Could you just wait a little longer?
Well, from my standpoint, I was looking at it from the fact of, like, I was never going to, like I said, we had conversations all week, and I was never going to judge anybody if they decided not to play. Like, I didn't have a problem with that. I was just kind of caught off guard that, guys want to leave so quickly. that was my end of it. Like, I was like, I wasn't going to judge anyone. Everyone had to make a decision what was best for them. And so from that standpoint, I didn't have a problem with anyone not playing. I didn't even have a problem with guys leaving so abruptly. It just kind of caught me off guard. I just wasn't expecting it. That I was kind of expecting that, okay, yeah, I don't feel comfortable playing, but let me wait a couple of days and see how this thing is going to play out. And if it's as bad as it is, then we'll make that next decision. I was just kind of caught off guard of how quickly everything had happened. Literally, I got the phone call that evening, and McLeod had said certain guys didn't want to play and that they were leaving that next morning. And I was like, that was my end on it. But, I wasn't judging those guys. I didn't have a problem with that because, I understand everyone has families and have to do what's best for them.
You come into that game and effectively you've got a 6-man rotation with respect to a couple of your junior guys, and you get up there. You were coming off an injury. You'd not played in a few weeks. CJ, same for him. You guys are dragging yourself in there. And I looked at the betting, as we said on air, about 3 hours before the game. You guys were favourites. By the start of the game, Solent had become favourites. What was the feeling going in? Because I spoke to a few of you guys before the game, and you were still like, we think we've got enough, and we'll be okay. Obviously, CJ had the size advantage over Solent, but internally, was there that level of nervousness at that point that having lost 3 key guys, that this could be a final that doesn't go your way?
Well, for me, that once Newcastle released the statement that we were losing a couple of guys, and then also with Kai Williams not traveling because his family was ill, I was still confident. Like, I was very surprised that once I started seeing messages pop up on social media accounts about how everyone just kind of wrote us off. Like, yeah, such and such, they only got 6 guys, like they're going to lose, like they don't have enough. And I'm thinking in my head, and as we're driving up to Glasgow, because we were driving up to Glasgow as Newcastle released a statement. So we're getting all these messages as we're on the bus, and, we're talking about everything that's going on. And I'm like, well, yeah, we have lost half of our team, but we still got professionals. We still got 6 professionals. Like, we still are a top half team in the BBL in the top league. So I was just kind of surprised of how people were writing us off. Although they've had a great season, they're undefeated, and they're a great team. I was still looking at the fact that, hey, we're professionals. Most of those guys aren't, as a lot of those guys have jobs. And I'm like, I was confident by that fact. And then I was also confident by 2 other reasons. I was like, CJ playing was very, very key because I knew going into that game he was going to be the difference just with the size advantage. I knew he was going to be able to slow the game up, and when we were struggling, get us easy baskets and make it tough on them in the paint. So he was critical. And then once I knew that Defoe and Fletch was playing, that's all the confidence I needed. Not to downplay anybody else, but it's only because I've been to so many battles with those 2 guys. I've played in so many finals with them, and one thing I know for certain is that when the money's on the line and it's a big game, that those 2 are going to show up. Everyone else on our roster is inexperienced. We got young guys. We haven't had guys that's played in big moments or games, but I was comforted by Defoe and Fletch and the experience that we brought going into that game.
I mean, it was a fabulous game for the neutral to watch, and I guess the fact you lost guys made it more even. And of course, it went to last shots. Shots missed by Trayvon Wright that could have won it for Solent. I mean, it was a fantastic contest, but in context of the 9 trophies, which I think you won now with Newcastle, how does that performance and that victory rank, given everything that surrounded it?
Well, once I reflect on this, once the dust settles and we look back on this will be right up there. It's tough to kind of decide right now on this game and the 2015-16 Cup final when we played against Leicester, just because, the year before we blew the 14-point lead in 4 minutes, or 11-point lead, I think, within the last 4 minutes of the game. and then flip it around a year later, we're down by 14 or 17 points, whatever it was, with 14 minutes to go, and we come back in dramatic fashion, and that ended up leading us to, I believe winning all four that year. So that game will always stick in my head. But, this game will be right up there just with everything we had to deal with and not even just for this moment, just everything we dealt with this season, not ever having a full squad, dealing with the first year coach, new philosophy, just so many factors that went into this season that once the dust settles, this game will probably, this trophy winner be up there at the top, I'm sure.
When we saw after the semi-final, you guys showering Mac with, I think it was bottled water. What did it kind of mean for you guys to give him a trophy? Because he's been involved for quite a few years now, as he stepped up when Fab left it just before the season started. But it seemed to be a genuine warmth to for him to succeed from you guys as players.
Yeah, that was led by Fletch, and a lot of the new guys, they don't probably understand as much as myself, Fletch, Kai, Darius does, but Max stepping into that head coach role, it was going to be tough for anyone to follow Fab footsteps, and I don't even know if I would have wanted to take the job, to be honest, because you it's a lose-lose situation, really. And so for him, it was a tough task, you know what I mean? So just with everything, when you're assistant coach and you got senior guys there stepping into the head coaching role, you never know how that's going to work, because it's almost kind of like the substitute teacher kind of aspect. And you don't know if you're going to get those guys respect, and then trying to follow Fab's footsteps. And it's not like, fans are fickle, we've spoiled. The fans in Newcastle have been spoiled, and, I don't think they're going to be patient for a rebuild. Like, they're used to winning, so they're going to want to win. And so, I think for him, I know for him it must felt great. But from us as players, it was just us showing our appreciation and just to let him know that, we respected him, which is the most important thing as a pro coach. It's not about all this other stuff. It's about respect, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with men. You can know all the X and O's you want. All of that stuff is about, do you have the respect of these men in the locker room? And I think that was a moment from our perspective saying, hey, we got your back, Mac.
Let's talk about your own kind of coaching arc at the moment, because you've had your own basketball skills development company for quite a while now. And you split it between work you do in Newcastle and work you do back home, the outskirts of Houston. Tell me about this thing. You used to call it, I know, Drew's Basketball Skill Development, DBS. Yeah. Thankfully, you come up to catch your name now, Train Harder. Tell me about that. What's the philosophy behind it?
Well, basically, the philosophy behind Train Harder is just becoming the best version of yourself. So although it is a basketball skill academy, I'm branching off into mentoring, into, merchandise, into all the areas. So I want to be able to reach all people that come from all walks of life. So that's why I kind of expanded. And, just to give people the confidence that if you believe in yourself, if you work hard, that, the results will come. My journey into where I am today, I was never a top player. I was always kind of a mediocre player, and I just got to where I've gotten to just through simple hard work. So, through Train Hard, I just want to inspire, young athletes, not even young athletes, just, adults, whoever that's in there, wherever space that they're in, that, hey, just put your best foot forward, work hard, give it your best shot, and let's see what happens. And even though that doesn't guarantee you success, at least you can go to bed at night and say, you know what, I tried, it just didn't work out. Because that's the biggest thing that I learned in this basketball journey is when I go home in the summer, how many guys say, man, I wish I would have stuck with it. I wish I wouldn't have quit. I wish I wouldn't have gave up. So, that's kind of where Train Harder derives from. But obviously our bread and butter is about skill development. And I just want to focus on giving back what I never had. I never went to a basketball camp. I never had a basketball coach growing up, or a private coach, or any of these things that we offer. And I just want to be able to pass everything that I've learned, just pass it forward to the next generation.
I mean, in your website, when you're talking about in your bag, you're talking about your arc of your career. So this is your quote. I said, "I've always been the underdog. In 8th grade, I was a C team player with athleticism but lacked skill, and that was the moment I began focusing on skill development."
Yep.
Where did the light bulb for you go off in terms of this is what I need to be my focus, and what steps or what changes did you begin to make?
Well, that was a turning point for me. I was maybe 12 years old. So, we kind of I grew up in my mom's hometown. It's called Brookshire, Texas, predominantly African American area. And in 7th grade, I was the best player on the team. It's a very small town, probably less than 3,000 people. And, I heard a lot of noise in the town. Oh, he's the best. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. And then the next year, my mom moved us to Katy, which is a more affluent area. It's only 7 miles up the road. But now, Katy has grown into, the centerpiece of Houston, huge area. And I became a small pit fish in a big pond. And I realized then in 8th grade, when I moved in 8th grade and we had basketball tryouts, and I'll take you through the moment. That next day, we were told that the team list to be posted up in the gym. So I get to school early. I felt confident. I had a great tryout. I get in there, I look at the A-team list, just assuming I was going to be on A-team. I was in A-team at the last school I was in, and I didn't see my name on A-team. So, looking dazed and confused, I looked down at the B-team list, didn't see my name on the B-team. And just to give you a little context, like in Brookshire, it was small, so you only had one team. But when I moved to Katy, it was so many students that there was only 36 spots that make the team, and there probably over 100 kids that try out. So many, many kids get cut. And so I look at the B team list. I don't see my name either. And then I look down at the C team list, and I see Drew Lasker on that list. And immediately, like, tears just started rolling down my eyes. I was so hurt. And so I go up to the coach, and I ask him, why did I make the C team? And he was like, and I went up to him pretty much with my mind made up that I was going to quit. And he kind of talked me out of it. And he was like, just work hard and, we'll move you up during the year. And so, long story short, I never got moved up, ended up finishing the year. But that was the light bulb moment for me, was that in this journey, if I want to reach all my goals, that you can't listen to the noise. You got to ignore the noise. Like rankings and all of that stuff, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't matter where you come from. It just matters how good you are. And that summer, I worked on my game every single day. I couldn't work on my game during the day I played because the outdoor, this is when we used to play at outdoor courts. It was so busy. So I used to go there at night at 11 o'clock at night because that's when the lights would cut on. I would be at, my mom allowed me to go over there every night, and I would go out there every night and practice, not with a plan or anything, because I was just out there just practicing. And that's kind of where the skill development aspect of what I do now, that seed began.
What do you think? I mean, you work with a lot of younger people, and you work obviously with other players, etc. What do you think is still in these days when there's a bit more awareness about player development? Obviously, NBA teams have player development, but in Europe as well, it's the concept is there. But yet, you and I both know we see players coming into the BBL, particularly American players, who don't have the fundamental skills that they need to make a long career out of it. What's the biggest thing that you see that people still don't have, or why is that light bulb not going off for some of these guys and girls?
I think you hit the light bulb on the head, and that's one thing that we focus on. And, to a lot of players, it might be unattractive, but we are really, really focused on fundamentals. We get a lot of clients, and they come in and they want to do, all these great things that they see on Instagram or they see on TV. And I'm like, our philosophy is, yeah, we'll teach you that, but you have to prove to us that you can do all the basics first. It's like a baby. Like, you cannot walk. You got to crawl before you walk. So you have to learn all the basics. And once you get the basics, then we'll teach you the meat potatoes. But I think nowadays what's lost, what's missing is that, and Kobe Bryant said it best, like you can't get bored with the basics, with the fundamentals. And a lot of athletes do. They see all these moves and things that go viral and they want to do that. And my philosophy is you can't skip the struggle. Like, in order to get there, like, you have to have a foundation. And so that's what's missing, is that the foundation process has been skipped and everyone is just practicing everything that they see on social media. And so when it comes down to the nitty gritty, this game is based off fundamentals. When you get down to it, as you saw in the final, with 2 minutes on the clock, defensively, I take a charge for my team. Like, that's nothing that will probably go viral on social media, but that's fundamentals. That play is huge, or an offensive rebound, or, nothing that you saw in that final came down to anything fancy happening. It just came down to executing, making your free throws, making your open shots, just making the right play. And that's what the game always comes down to fundamentals.
I think there was an NBA coach not that long ago who was talking about this. He said he couldn't believe with a lot of personal trainers, so the guys that the NBA players will use, particularly in the off season. And he said he couldn't believe how often some of these guys spent on behind the back dribble drills. And he said, how often do you actually ever use that these days, as opposed to the time you would spend on, just say free throw shooting or such like? He said, sometimes it's just the little small things that people do is completely off. And he said that was the points of emphasis sometimes were, even for guys who are working at the highest level and your best players are earning millions a year, sometimes they'd go on the off season and not be working on the things they actually use. They'd be working on stuff that people for some reason thought they had to do. When you're giving kids advice, and a lot of the times you're working with kids here, I mean, what do you say to them is the things when they, because they're not always with a coach, what do you say to them? Like, this is what you should be doing when you're on your own, or if you get 5 minutes in a gym or before a practice session starts. What's the things you say? Look, focus on this.
One thing that I always tell kids is I always ask them first. I say, hey, have you ever been to an NBA game? And most of the time, most of them say no. And I tell them, I share with them, I say, if you get to an NBA game really, really early, before the popcorns begins brewing and all of that stuff, what you'll see is the best players in the world starting right underneath the rim. They'll start off with a little simple ball handling drill with a skill development coach, get warmed up, get the blood flowing. Then they begin under the rim, form shooting, working on their touch, and they slowly work their way out. And that's one thing that I emphasize to kids, because the first thing they do when they hit the court is they want to shoot threes. And I'm like, you have to work yourself in and then work yourself out. And I'm like, if the best players in the world start in, then why shouldn't you? And so that's one thing that I really try to pass down to them. And one thing that I got from Gilbert Arenas listening to his podcast that that's becoming misconstrued in my space is, with these trainers working on, a lot of these moves, is most of these moves are, they're reactive moves. So a lot of these moves that they work on, you might use it once a month. So we have like an 80-20 philosophy. So like 80% of the session, we want to focus on fundamentals and basics. Then 20 minutes of 40 minutes we're working on the fundamentals and basics. And then the rest of the 20 minutes, then we can kind of get into some of that cool, fun stuff. Because, some of that stuff we teach you or that you're going to be working on in that 20 minutes, you might use that once a month, that move. So you don't want to spend too much time on it. Although on the flip side of it, you got to have it in your repertoire. So you want to spend time on it because you never know when you're going to need it. Whenever that opportunity comes for you to use it, it needs to be in your bag, as these kids say, and you got to be able to execute it. So, you want to be able to spend time on it, but I don't feel like majority of your session should be focused on that. It should be focused on the basics and the fundamentals.
You've done some cool stuff on your Facebook page at the minute. If you want, you can search just Drew Lasker or Drew Lasker 21. But we've seen this stuff from the Body Coach. You're doing your own version of daily workouts for people. Tell us about that. And what was the thinking behind it, and what are people going to see if they tune in?
Well, I would obviously everyone is self-quarantined all around the world, and my thought process was, and this is one thing I always tell kids, that no matter what, as long as you have a ball, you can always work on your game. So no excuses. My motto is no excuse, just produce. So there's always something that can be worked on, and for me, I thought, wow, this is a perfect opportunity for most athletes who get bored with working with the fundamentals to kind of spend time working on things that you probably don't ever make time for, like a jump stop or a jab or defensive slides, things like that I'm doing in the videos. And I just wanted to be able to reach those athletes and just keep them active. And another part of it is also just for our own sanity, because obviously if you just sit in your house all day, you'll probably drive yourself crazy. And the one thing that kind of motivates you and give you energy is exercising. And basketball is a fun way to exercise. So initially when I had the thought process of doing it, my target market was, okay, yeah, I'm going to work with basketball players. And then I thought about it. I was like, no, let's target all people. This is a great time. Obviously we're all with our families. This is a great time for us to, do these drills with your mom or your dad or your sister, your brother. So I make the drills tailored to where you can take them very high level or you can tailor them down. So try to make it fun and just, trying to make the best out of this situation, where your mentality can kind of go down a really dark path. So I actually didn't see the body coach. I didn't actually hear about him until after I done my first one, but I actually watched his and kind of took some tips from what he does, kind of engaging with the audience as you do it. So I kind of took some tips with him, and I actually thought, I was like, you know what, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing the same thing that he's doing, except we're using a basketball.
And you're not getting 1 million or 2 million people watching it. But, it's early days.
That's very true.
And you need to get your own range of cookbooks. But apart from that, that's the next step.
One thing that's important, you mentioned that, and this is one thing I always say to coaches, because a lot of people, reach out to me who's starting their own program or their own business or whatever, and the biggest advice I always give them is I say, don't focus on how many people you have on board or how many customers you have. Like, coach what's in front of you. Even if you have one person, if I had one viewer joining in, then that's enough for me. I'm going to coach them to the best of my ability. So, don't ever get caught up in numbers. If you work hard and you do a good job, those numbers will come over time.
How much of it? I mean, you're 37 now. So I haven't quite figured if you're the oldest guy in the BBL now, because obviously someone had to take over from Fab. But in terms of longevity, you're right up. I mean, how much of all the things that you've talked about have been key in this longevity that you've been able to have?
Well, when I first got my first job in Plymouth in 2005, for some reason, unconsciously, I just thought to myself, like, I want to play until I'm 40. And the reason behind that is because at the time, like, I was so in love with basketball, like, I wanted to play forever. And so that was a goal of mine. Like, I was like, okay, I want to play until I'm 40. And so I think the blessing in this disguise was my first year in Plymouth. I dealt with a lot of hamstring injuries throughout the year. And anybody that knows hamstring injuries, they're very, very frustrating, and they're niggly. They come and go. And that ended up being a blessing in disguise, because I ended up learning how to really take care of my body. Whereas you see most rookies, they come in, they don't really stretch, they don't really hydrate, they don't do the things that's necessary. They just play, because, I mean, your body is capable of it at that age, at 22 or 23 or whatever. But because I was injured so much, I ended up having to focus on my body and making sure my body was right. I remember reaching out to, like, my trainer constantly back at college, asking for tips. And over the years, as I gotten little injuries, I just kind of took it upon myself to figure out what it was and to, figure out how I can bounce back. Because one thing that anybody knows about British basketball, and it is getting better, that the resources are very limited when it comes to physios and doctors. So it's not the same as when you come from college, where you get that treatment 24/7 every day. Some teams you might be able to only see the physio 2 times a week. So I had to figure out at that time, like, how to take care of myself. And that ended up being a blessing in disguise. And so, once I turned 30, I really started to notice my body changing. My last year at Plymouth in 2013. And I actually thought I was coming towards the end of the road. And I come to Newcastle and get under Fab's tutelage. And I remember him meeting with me one day, my first year there, and he was like, basically he put me in a predicament. This actually happened after the Cup final, after we blew the lead. I had a 2-hour meeting with him, Forrester, and I think McLeod was in at the time. And they were like, I didn't perform up to my ability. And they was like, look, you got the next 3 months to prove to us that, you're going to be here for the next 3 months, or either you're going to be here for the next 10 years. And I kind of looked at him when he said next 10 years, and I was thinking in my head, like, I guess he saw it in my body language. I was thinking, 10 years, like, I'll be 40. And he saw that, and he was like, yeah, 10 years. He was like, I believe that if you do the things necessary, that you could play for another 10 years. And, lo and behold, he was almost right, because it's been 7 years or 8 years since. But, I just really began to, follow his lead and pay attention to the things that he was doing. Like, if anyone that knows Fab, he has a lot of advice. He'll sit and talk to you for an hour at a time. And although I don't use everything that he's told me, I've taken out the things that I've seen him do, watch him do, heard him talk about, and kind of implemented it into my routine, what works best for me.
Does that include his homemade toothpaste and all those other weird and wonderful things we all find about?
Yeah, exactly my point.
You did your master's degree at Northumbria a couple of years ago in professional sports coaching. And what do you... Because a lot of time coaches just fall into jobs and they just carry on. I remember speaking to Derek Fisher a few years ago, and I said, what have you developed yourself at? And this when he was at the Knicks. I said, well, I just picked it up as a player, and you thought, is this going to work? And so it proved, potentially. But when you're a player, and obviously you're taking things from your coaches right all the way back to high school and college and in professional ranks, etc. But then you go and do it as a study it. I mean, study it up front as an academic kind of exercise as well as all the practical stuff. But how does that inform you both as a player, but also with that, all the development stuff and also what you may want to do in the future?
I think for me, like when that opportunity was on the table, the first thing that I thought was it gives me an opportunity to separate myself, because in the space that I am in player development, now I started in 2007 when it wasn't even a thing. Now everybody's a basketball skill coach, and the market is very flooded, and everybody's doing it. But basically, I thought to myself that it'd give me an opportunity to kind of separate myself from the crowd, because I have the player playing experience, which already separates me, because not many are able to say they played at this level. But then I also have the book science to it all, and one thing that I think is evident is just because you played basketball, played at a high level, it doesn't mean you can coach, and just because you studied basketball, it doesn't mean you can coach. So I was very aware of that. Of just because I've been able to play this long, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm going to be a good coach. And for me, I thought it'd be a great opportunity for me to learn the other side of it, the mental side of coaching. And I got out of it exactly, to be honest with you, I actually thought it was going to be me sitting around a table with 8 other coaches, us having a cup of tea and kind of discussing coaching. That's literally what I thought it was going to be. And I got a rude awakening. My first assignment, I can't remember what exactly it was on. It was something about philosophy. And I ended up failing. I ended up making like a 45 or something like that. And that was a huge wake-up call. And I was like, wow, I'm actually going to have to really work if I want to pass this course. So, and that was, that ended up being a great thing, because then I ended up having to take it seriously, and, having to write all different type of reports and all of that. And it was a great thing for me, and to be able to get, the philosophy side behind coaching, because a part of coaching that people don't realize, that it's a lot more than just standing on the sidelines. Like, you got to be organized. You got to know how to prepare. You got to know how to write PowerPoint notes, all these things if you want to be organized. And just because you played, you won't necessarily have those skills. So you got to be able to learn those skills. So that's what it was for me, being able to learn, how to operate all that technology and implement it into coaching.
So where does that take you? Does it take you in a route of being a better skills development coach? Does it take you in the route of being a high school coach, a college coach, a pro coach? Where's that next step?
For me, I'm currently the head coach of Gateshead College here in Newcastle. This is my second year in charge. And also I run, my Train Harder program, which is skill development. For me, I'm more passionate about skill development. Like, that's where I feel like my niche is. Like, I feel like I'm a good coach. I don't feel like I'm a necessarily great coach, but I feel like being in this seat will allow me to learn skills that I'll be able to implement into skill development. But you never know what the future holds. Like I always said that I wouldn't want to be a coach, like an actual coach. But you never know. Maybe maybe this is the way the stars are aligning. This is why I'm in this job, so I can get better at it. So one day I become a coach. I don't really see it, but you never know. Fab told me the same thing, that he never saw himself as a coach, and actually they just kind of he kind of touched on it a little bit on the Eagles website 2 days ago in a kind of a Zoom interview, and the opportunity just kind of dropped in his lap. So you never know where this journey is going to take you. I just want to be prepared for wherever that next step is. And I don't think it's any better time to do it than when you're playing, because when you're playing is when you have the most free time. So, I always try to tell guys to take advantage of the free time that you have and try to better yourself, because once you finish, you're not going to have as much time anymore. So you're going to be thrown into something. So why not try to develop skills while you're actively playing?
15 years in this league. Who's the craziest teammate you've ever had?
Man, 15 years, that means 15 different teams, which means well over 100 different teammates. And I had a lot of different personalities, a lot of weird personalities that I would consider weird, but I would have to say probably back in 2009, 10, I believe, or 8, 9, back in Plymouth, I had a teammate named Mike Comain, and he was my roommate at the time, and he was 6'10", kid from Boston, like really athletic and really, really promising, and really thought he was gonna take us to another level. But he just had some weird tendencies, and I remember when we were this is when we used to work out at the Naval Base down in Plymouth, and he was stretching James Noel. We were partner stretching, and he was doing a hamstring stretch, and he was stretching James, and I was next to him, and he was like, dude, I can just break your freaking leg right now. and I'm looking at him like, what? And James was like, why would you want to do that? Like, if anybody knows James, he's just innocent. And so, that was kind of the first thing. And then, he was my roommate, so we lived together, and he was in the kitchen one time, and he had a knife, like a big sharp knife, and he kind of, I'm there fixing my pizza, putting it in the oven, and he's like making moves on me like he's some kind of like it's a sword. If you can kind of imagine that the knife is a sword in his hand, and he's kind of play fighting with me, and I'm like, yo, dude, don't play with me like that, like, no. And then the last straw was and the funny thing is that his girlfriend had came over at the time, and she was kind of normal. Like, we kind of got on, and anytime she would go to the bathroom, he would go and stand outside the door, which I thought was really awkward. And then the last straw was our garage was in the back of the house, and that's where our laundry room was. And it was like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm asleep. I hear the garage door open, and I'm thinking of some burglars or something. So I jump out the bed, look out the window, and he's just standing there outside, staring in my window. And so I'm like, I get on the phone the next morning with Gary Stronach, and I'm like, Coach, you know me, I'm low maintenance. I don't ever complain about anything, but I can't, we got to do something with this guy. It's either him or me. And so, a couple of days later, they ended up releasing him. And so, that's probably, Mike is probably the craziest. I've had a lot of different teammates and, a lot of stories. But that one kind of sticks out in my mind.
Like guys who don't come out of the locker room at halftime on a regular basis. The stories go on and on.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you guys, let's talk about this current state of isolation. How much are you guys, obviously some of your teammates are back in the States or in France or whatever, how much are you guys kind of keeping in touch through all this?
To be honest with you, not much at all. I know in our team group chat, Forrester and McLeod have kind of put some stuff out there, just some videos and clips and stuff for us to watch just to stay active. But there hasn't been much conversation amongst players. I'm assuming that everyone is just kind of focused in their own domain. So it hasn't been much communication. Obviously, maybe a little bit through social media, but nothing like personally that I've seen. I mean, for me personally. But, everyone's kind of scattered across the universe at the moment and kind of obviously stuck in their homes. And I know that it could be very tough. And that's the one part I'm really concerned about, and a reason why I wanted to start those basketball workouts is just because I was concerned about the mental wellness of everyone. I know on day one, because my schedule is crazy. I'm coaching Gateshead in the morning, then I'm going to Eagles practice, and then I'm doing individual training at night. So I'm always, and then I have a family, so I'm always moving around. And so day one, like, I was really like kind of demotivated. I was just laying on the couch, like not really motivated to do anything. And so I saw where that could lead people. So that's why I kind of wanted to start that, to get people up and active. And so hopefully everyone out there is at this time just finding something. Now I'm on day, maybe I think we're on, I don't know where we are. I know we're over a week now, maybe day 11 or 12. And I kind of got it figured out now, like, of how to maximize my time and making the most out of it. And one thing that kind of stuck out is that actually a couple weeks before this, my daughter's 3, and my wife mentioned to me that my daughter said, why does daddy always have to leave? And, at the moment when she told me that, it kind of really kind of stung me a little bit. And so it's a blessing in disguise. I've got an opportunity to spend every day with her because my wife is working. She's working from home, but I'm spending every day with her. So getting to spend time with her that I don't usually get. So, I think this is going to be a blessing in disguise once it's all done.
And you and your wife, one at home, another one on the way as well, and a second child.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we're expecting another one, during these crazy times. So, but yeah, we're excited. We weren't going to actually share that news publicly. We're just going to kind of keep it personal. But the wife just kind of woke up on Mother's Day and felt like she wanted to share with the world, kind of put some good news out there. Because, on social media, you see a lot of negative stuff out there with everything that's going on. So yeah, our family is growing during this time. And, my situation is up in limbo. So, crazy times, but not for me, for everybody.
Top 5 BBL players this season. Who would you have on that list?
Top 5 players this year. Let me see. Let me bring up the standings, because for me, I'm old school. That means something to me, like where you are in the standings. And obviously I have to go by where we are at this current day because the season isn't finished. But if it did finish today, I would have to go point guard. I got to go with my boy Fletch. But I would say it's a toss-up between him and Cartwright. And Cartwright really surprised me because we were his first professional game. And if you saw that, Fletch pretty much gave him a clinic. I think Fletch had like 33 and like 12 or something, and he might have had like maybe 8 points. And I guarantee you that's a game he'll never forget. And after that, he kind of took his game to another level. So he's impressed me, and he's impressed me with how high he has Cheshire up in the table. So a toss-up, but obviously I got to go with my man. The other guard position, I would say probably Namon Wright. He really stepped up the last part of the season. His shooting really improved, his three-pointer, and I think that kind of took his game to another level. He had some big games and kind of really taken Leicester up to another level since the beginning of the year when they were struggling. And the last 3 spots, I got to go, again, I'm about winners. Worcester, they wanted the cup, so I got to go with Amir Williams, and I think he's been a turning point for their team. They brought him in right before we played them in the cup before they knocked us out, and he's been a turning point because he makes you change your shot when you get in the paint. And the other 2 spots, obviously, you got to go with Ovi. He's proven that he's on another level. The way he's played this year. And you can see that the talent is definitely the talent is obvious. And then for that last spot, I got to go with my guy, CJ. He's been dominating, and but between him and Williams is probably the biggest 2 transactions of the season. between those two, and he's pretty much changed the outlook of our team, having that, big body in the middle that's not only big but that can play. And I think if the season ended today, I would have to give him the MVP. He would be high on my list. So that's my 5: Fletch, Namon Wright, Amir Williams, Ovi, and CJ.
Last one for you. We talk about if the season ends today. Do Glasgow get that title? Do you award the title? It's the philosophical question that's dividing the BBL at the moment.
You know what? I've seen a lot of things on Twitter regarding that, and I've had a lot of chuckles on that.
There have been some very good memes on Twitter from other teams, it must be said.
Yeah, and I must say that the league, I must give the league a round of applause, because no one is taking that stuff too serious and not too sensitive about it, which is great, because all of that stuff is good. And I think that's the next step for the league, is to start promoting players, promoting rivals, promoting villains. Like, that's how you kind of market. I think that would be a great way to market the league. So that stuff is great. But as far as my opinion on it, I'm looking at the standings right now, and Glasgow are 12-3. They play 15 games, which is more than anybody. And although they have less, the least amount of losses, I think London, Worcester, Leicester, Chester, Newcastle, Sheffield will have a lot to say about us just giving them the trophy, because they have games in hand. And I think from the other standpoint, not only from that, like other teams are prideful, is that I don't really think that those guys would really want to accept that. I kind of looked at it like when us and Leicester, right? So Newcastle and Leicester have been rivals over the last 7 or 8 years, and every time we play each other, if one team, like if we beat Leicester and they're a man down and they're dealing with injuries, like it doesn't feel the same. Like, even though we always need that win, like that victory, it never feels the same if we don't beat them at full strength. And I would have to think that the players on the Rocks would have to feel the same. Like, it wouldn't feel the same with it having an asterisk. But on the other side, I can kind of see where they're coming from, because since I've been in the league, Glasgow hasn't won anything. They've been close. I think maybe in 2006 and 2007, you'll be able to correct me, they maybe finished runner-up in the league and had a real shot at winning the league. So from their standpoint, of course they're desperate. Like, it's like we've never won. We've always gotten close, and we have a great opportunity. And no, don't do this to us. Don't do this to us. We're right there. So I can kind of look at it from their perspective, but Glasgow fans, no. Sorry, guys.
I guess it's the one unfortunate consequence of switching the league to this home and away as opposed to the 3-game, and it would have been a 30-game season if you take out the Royals, and we probably would have played a slightly higher percentage of games, and it might have felt a little different. But when you've only got a 20-game season, it makes it slightly more complicated this year. Slightly unfortunate.
Every game matters, and they have some tough games coming up. They have to come to us. I know they still have to play Leicester, and like we don't know how this thing is going to play out. And I can understand if our league was set up like other leagues in Europe, where everyone plays weekly and everyone's on the same game schedule, and maybe it was 5 games to go, and maybe they had a 3-game league. Like, kind of like Liverpool in the Premiership. Yeah. Like, I don't have a problem with Liverpool, with us saying that they won the league. Like, they pretty much have it by a landslide at the moment. Like, I can understand them circumstances, but you're 4 points ahead. You have more games in hand. You got a tough schedule coming up. Like, I'm sorry, that's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Ben, you're in Newcastle. Glasgow are traditionally your rivals. You'd have to say that. Or the Eagles fans would never let you live it down.
Yeah, but obviously everyone else in the world is saying the same thing that we're saying.
Yeah. Anyway, we shall see what happens. If you want to follow Drew and find more about his training, you can go to drewlasker.com. Drew, it's been a pleasure having you on. Stay safe and keep up the videos, and we'll all be working out in our back gardens to them, our back coaches.
I'm ready to see that clip where you're out there in your garden in your basketball shorts, out of the suit and tie, putting in some work.
A suit and tie, I can't remember the last time I wore a suit and tie. I won't be getting on my pyjamas for months. Anyway, take care of yourself and thanks for coming on.
You too. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of the MVP Cast. You can listen to all our previous editions online at mvp247.com or subscribe via your preferred podcast provider. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at Mark Britball, and we've got some great guests lined up for you over the next few weeks. So stay tuned. But for now, from me, Mark Woods, stay safe out there and goodbye.